I'd like to call the September 26, 2019 Piqua City Schools Board of Education meeting to order. Mr. Hiddle, please call the roll.
Mr. Patrizio.
Here.
Mr. Ford.
Here.
Mrs. McMackin.
Here.
Mr. Bostic.
Here.
Mr. Height.
Here. Please stand and join me in the pledge. Side note without a comma. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. You have before you've had a chance to review the minutes from April 22nd regular board meeting. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Are there any further discussion? Any additions or corrections? If not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Any changes to the agenda?
No, sir.
Okay, you've had a chance to review the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, agenda is approved. I'm going to take a little bit different tack tonight with the Upper Valley Career Center report instead of just reporting on a business meeting, which we had on Monday. I asked Mr. Thompson to share a little bit more about the partnerships that are going on with the Career Center that are putting us way ahead of a lot of places, not just here. So.
Sure, thank you. We are very fortunate to have the Career Center right next door, and they have been excellent partners. In fact, Nancy Luce, the president there, has just recently hosted a statewide empowerment conference through all the career centers that came. And Mr. Messick and I got a chance to go over there and present some of the success-bound pieces that we're doing. I think it was very well received, and it really is just because the partnership is so great. They have so much overflow in terms of students that need and want those services that they can't house all of them. So we had this old 500 wing, we call it, that had all of our shop classes in it. And over the years, in the 90s, we got rid of those classes because of curriculum changes. And we've redone that with the Career Center, and we have some great new programming which allows students to get some really good career training, as well as staying at the high school and participating in things that they want to, such as show choir, band, and some of the other great offerings that we have. So that was really a great time to learn from other people, but to also showcase that. They also this past week brought Sydney in. Sydney was very interested in what was going on. They've kind of heard some different things, so they spent the day looking at some programs at the junior high as well as the high school. Happened to be on Friday where we won the game, which was another great piece there, but they were very appreciative actually, and it was a really, really positive thing to walk with the Career Center and the people from Sydney to show them some of the great things. And people from throughout the state actually have sent some great feedback. Rob also did a piece for some of the city leadership that came through and did a tour. He received some really good feedback on that. So we really are ahead of the game. Some of our people in our leagues are calling and asking, what are you doing? We keep hearing about this, and can we come and check it out? And they'll come up and take some photos and ask some really good questions. So I feel really great about not only what we're doing, but the partnership we have. We couldn't do it without the Career Center, that's for sure. And their expertise, their programming, and all the things they bring to the table really is a benefit to our students in our district. So I applaud their work, and I really value the partnership.
Well, I know that just around our board meetings there, the other feeder schools that can't do what we're doing are a little jealous because we're so far ahead of the game. So
Yeah.
we're going to see that, I think, more and more just within these districts.
Absolutely, yep. We'll keep building some more programs. We've got some more things in mind, so it'll go well.
Okay. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay, if not, I have nothing about hearing the public on agenda items. Mr. Hiddle, Treasurer's Report or an agenda.
Good evening. Were there any questions on the monthly fiscal reports?
So where you had some property revenues that came in, is that just any now in at this time last year? Is that just because they came in earlier?
Yeah, there was a shift. Sometimes it's a timing issue. So at this point, property tax revenues are stable, stagnant. You can call it whichever you want. Very little change. A lot of that's due to the commercial area, not so much residential. As we know, residential home prices in the area have been increasing. But it's really specifically geared towards the reductions that we've seen in values on the mall as well as the Walmart building complex that's over there. They both have had significant reductions in their property values.
Now, this was a $600,000 line item. So let me look real quick here and try to get it up. It's a $642,000 figure. It's a property tax allocation. And then the previous years, there's dashes, which indicates that we didn't have it at this point in time. Is that a new item, or is that a timing issue?
That's got to be timing issues as far as when it shows up. That money there is the money that comes back for the 10.5, the homestead reimbursement and the home and the rollback. So that's the 12.5% total for seniors. Or
It just came in earlier this year.
it did.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on the monthly fiscals?
Tonight you're approving the FY20 appropriations. I have a quick sheet for you to look at as far as the historical as well as what we have projected for expenses and revenues for the fiscal year. I'm also working on the 5-year forecast. That's why you have the sheet in front of you, but this is just the FY20 numbers that show up with the appropriations. Our revenues, if you look at them, our revenues are nearly the same as last year. We're talking about an increase of somewhere about $20,000 over last year. And one of the biggest changes in that is dealing with the state funding freeze, as well as we received 2 payments for Medicare, or our MSP, which is our Medicare reimbursement program for services that are offered to our students who are on Medicare, Medicaid. That is about $400,000 annually with reimbursements, but we received 2 payments last year, so it bumped it up and ballooned up our revenues, and so that comes off of there. So when you take into account all those different pieces, we're basically going to have about the same exact revenue this year as we did last year. And obviously expenses go up between the negotiated agreement, but as well as our purchase services, as we've talked about in the other board meetings, have to keep that open to our services that we offer to our special education is one of those things that you don't really know what you're going to have every year. So it's one of those things that's hard to predict. Any questions about that? The next thing on the list is the approval of the salary adjustments. This year we had about $22,000 worth of tuition reimbursement, and we had 6 people moving from one column to the next, be it a bachelor's to a bachelor's 15 or moving from bachelor's to a master's degree, those kind of column moves. So I always think it's a good thing when we see that our teachers are growing and providing even higher quality education to our students. So it's a good investment to for our students and our staff. And the last thing in the agenda tonight is the rate certificate, approving the 3 mil rate certificate for the permanent improvement levy that passed in May. So that's on there for your approval as well. Any questions?
Anybody have any other questions for Jeremy? Okay, if not, do we have a motion to approve the treasurer's agenda?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, please call the roll since we've got money involved.
Mr. Ford.
Aye.
Mrs. McMacken.
Aye.
Mr. Bostic.
Aye.
Mr. Patrizio.
Aye.
Mr. Height.
Aye. Motion carried. Superintendent's report.
Thank you. What I have this evening is really our building updates. We do feature a building each month, and you'll remember last month our 2 primaries worked together to do something, and they will as well this time. I know you've got a little bit to add to some, but do you want to start first, Ms. Troglin?
Sure. Tonight I have a couple guests that are going to talk to you. These are coaches from Washington Primary, and I think we also have Spring Creek's coaches back there. So they're going to start to talk about some of the work that they've done in our building.
When you say coaches, what kind of coaches?
So they are help coaching the teachers on how to deal with the social emotional needs of our students. So I'm going to let Mrs. Moore and Mr. Nick come up and talk to you, and then we'll turn it over to Spring Creek so they're going to finish.
Perfect, thank you.
Good evening. We are excited to share with you some new initiatives that we're doing in the elementary level. One initiative we're doing with the SEL standards in Ohio is self-awareness, and we're utilizing breathing techniques with the students. Using the breathing techniques, they're able to kind of self-check when they're stressed or upset and kind of do deep breaths and kind of bring themselves back, being able to learn again. We're using sayings such as, "I am safe, I am calm, I can handle this," and we use with the students from the teacher's standpoint, "My job is to keep you safe, and your job is," and the student responds to help keep it that way. So we're kind of utilizing those terms for them to understand when we're at school, we're keeping it as a safe environment for you to learn. We're using calm kits in each classroom, and the calm kit contains a timer, a stress ball, and other items to help calm the students. If a student needs to calm down, they use the calm kit in the classroom. This keeps the students in the room, which allows them to still hear what's going on in the classroom if they're upset. So if they may have a moment of rage or upsetness, they'll go back to that area and they'll kind of use something for 5 minutes, decompress, and then go back into the educational environment again.
I'm going to talk about self-management, and our focus has been on the playground the last couple of weeks, and we've gotten a lot of input from our PE teacher, Holly Peoples, to help us with that. So we have more of an organized play areas with equipment that stays in those areas with very defined boundaries. We have a think zone where a student is sent to reflect on behavior and then come up with some better choices. We have a problem-solving zone, which is a place for students to talk about a situation, come up with an explanation that they agree upon, and then bring that back to the teacher to try to have them solve their own problems, and then have the teacher get involved. We have a calm zone, which is a bench to de-escalate using some of the breathing techniques that are used in the classroom. And then we have a buddy bench, which is a place to sit and meet another student, to find somebody to play with, or to hopefully be sitting there waiting for somebody to ask them to play, to keep them involved during recess.
So before you go on, Marty, you've been in the district 30 years, you were a teacher, now you're doing this.
Yes.
What changes have you seen in the student population in the last 30 years?
I don't even know where to begin. A lot of more social and emotional issues.
When you say that, what do you mean?
We see a lot of trauma. We see a lot of, they don't know how to deal with their feelings, their anger. And we're just working together to try to get them to understand those feelings and to how to cope with it.
What's the parental involvement?
Well, that's where we step in and try to do a lot of the stuff that maybe they missed when they were younger,
Okay.
and some developmental stages.
Is there correspondence with the parents, those that are involved?
Yes. We start with a referral process, and then we work as a team, and the more we get into it, we've just now started getting into our second round of referrals and some things that we're doing for step 2, and then we can get the parents involved. A lot of positive feedback with the parents, letting them know how the day's going.
How's the response from the parents been when you contact them with these issues?
Right now, it's the teachers who are basically contacting them to build that connection with the parents, but we will get involved later if we need to.
Big part of this is empowering the teachers to have the tools to work through the issues that they're experiencing with the high needs kids' behaviors. So I'll just give you an example. Somebody shared an email, one of the teachers shared an email out just this week with this concept that you gave us to implement into the classroom. Worked with this little girl, specifically the little girl managed her own behaviors. When she felt elevated, she went to her calm corner and then was able to redirect herself and come back to. So what happened was Marty and Shane worked with that teacher to come up with an idea for this particular high needs student. Now we're to a point after a very short time where the student's starting to show that ability to self-redirect or self-direct, depending on what that situation is. So the idea is really to get, they have to put out fires on a regular basis. I mean, that's part of the job. But more importantly, how do we develop a system so that our teachers are empowered to work with those kids? Because the kids are constantly coming back. You can't take a kid out, fix them, and then put them back in the same setting without tools for both people, for the student and the teacher. So that's a big part of what, in fact, that's the core of what they do. So.
We should point out, this is a response to the bill that came out last year that told us we could no longer suspend or expel students in K through 3. They have to be in an educational setting classroom under the direction of a teacher. So we no longer have the ability to take a student out of the classroom and remove them. So we had to come up with solutions. We couldn't just leave the teachers high and dry. So putting the coaches in place for what Shane called SEL, social emotional learning standards that the state has put out in response to all the trauma kids are facing. Everything from neglect, the drug problems, abuse, things that they may have experienced in their life that they just can't overcome, and now come and sit in a classroom and tend to learning. So they're doing a lot of research and putting a lot of programs together in response to that so teachers can get the support they need to keep that student as much as we can in the class, which now the law says we have to do. So,
Marty, what percentage would you estimate of the kids are the ones with social emotional issues?
What percentage would we say are the high needs kids?
Yes.
I would say we're talking 10-ish kids out of 540 kids. A high needs, like every day.
which can be
7
very,
times a day.
very intense to a teacher. When they're directing 20 other kids or more, and they've got that one really high intensive need, that's significant.
Compared
And then
to,
there's going to be another population of those that maybe aren't high needs every day, but depending on the day could go. There's a pot of those kids as well, but we're not talking majority of the kids, we're talking a small amount of kids that take up a majority of the time.
so are you seeing any benefit at this point? It's only been 2 months, but
We've spent the first 2 weeks of school allowing the teachers to try to handle their situations and make some connections with the kids. So then after 2 weeks, we kind of stepped in and we started having meetings with the teachers. And we would get at least 3 things to try. And then we've tried that for 2 weeks. And so now we're on our second round of meetings. And we are seeing one child who was leaving the classroom 10, 12 times a day to 0. That's just our first step. We still have other things that we need to work on, but at least he's in the room all day now.
so you always had good control of your classroom, I know that.
Well, I tried my best.
So are you, with the teachers that don't appear to have good control, are they picking up on some
They are.
clues too?
They are. They are picking up some ideas that we're sharing, and then we're having them share with each other to help get everybody on board, saying, this really does work. You need to try this.
Everything that they read this summer talked about the relationship with kids. So when there were children who misbehaved in the classroom, it used to be that I would pull those kids out and I would talk to them. Well, after several meetings, guess who has a great relationship with those kids? Me. So guess what they're going to do in the classroom to try to get down to see me? They're going to misbehave. So we've tried to focus on the kids having a great relationship with their teachers, hoping that that'll help improve their behavior because they'll want to perform better for their teacher, but just so that they can relate with their teacher and work through these issues, knowing that, yes, you made a bad choice, it doesn't mean I don't love you, it doesn't mean, that we can't get past this and go back to learning. So they sometimes will even cover teachers' duties, like they'll do lunch duty, they'll do recess duty, and then that teacher will eat with that child, talk with that child during that time, and just try to develop a relationship so that everything we read says it's all in the relationship.
The connection.
And that's so important for those kids who they need that. So that's one of the things they were doing.
Which we actually had a situation today where a student had said to us, we asked that child, would you rather have a reward or praise from your teacher? And he said, I'd rather be praised from my teacher that I'm doing a good job. So, just having that connection has been great for that student to understand that you're in that good working team environment.
One great thing about it too is you think about, again, a teacher who's trying to maintain the whole class. and you get that one disruption that you get diverted on, now they can remain focused while they do some problem solving. They try to figure out some solutions, and then they can come in and work with that teacher while they're still focused on the rest of their kids, and we don't lose a whole class for one kid. So they're really integral to that thinking, processing, and coming in and putting a concrete plan together, following up, making sure it works while the teacher keeps the whole class flow.
Tracy, with the new social emotional standards, are the counselors having to do classrooms now too?
So the counselor, like our counselor, I know Spring Creek do the same ideas, we do it in a different way. But our counselor goes in and teaches the social emotional standard, if you will, to the students, and teaches the students what that looks like. And then their job would be to teach the teacher how to interact with the students. So we've got it working on both ends so that it comes together.
Can you give one example of a standard, what you might be teaching to a child?
The standards for Ohio, we have self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. Let's see if I can give you an example here.
You think of that alone. Think of the kids that are getting up by themselves and getting them ready for school without an adult who might be at work, and then they come home by themselves. They're used to their own agenda. They're used to problem solving on their own, figuring things out, kind of doing what they want. Now we get them into a school setting with other students. They got to play well in the sandbox together. They have to listen to an adult guide them. Now their processing has changed. They're no longer doing their own agenda. They're focused on what the person is telling them, and that's not what they're normally used to doing. So it's getting them used to a social setting with others, listening, cooperating, attending, and being a part of the group rather than this is just what I want to do. It's a whole different.
We're also teaching those same skills, like the Ohio readiness standards, we're also teaching it through clubs as well. So when we split kids up into clubs on Tuesdays, that's 10 or less students per adult for an hour, and it's based on interest. So if I have a club because I absolutely love animals, and my club's about animals, then the kids who are in my club also love animals. So now I'm an adult who has a common interest with this small group of kids, so I can start developing relationships. So the club might be pets, but me, the actual skill I'm teaching is responsibility. So it's, how do you take care of pets and things. So we're trying to think of creative ways to teach these to children in a way that they can understand.
So Shane gave some self-awareness examples that we're doing at school, and then I did self-management, those things on the playground, to try to manage themselves. And then we've got other examples for social awareness.
Let me get back here to social awareness. Social awareness. So we're doing, we call it a morning greeting in the classroom instead of doing like the whole building announcements. So we have the teacher at the door who's greeting the students each morning. They may have like a special fist bump with those students or like a high five, and those students are really relating well to that because they're building those connections with that teacher where we've had a child say before, maybe that teacher with the yellow shirt reminds me of my mom going to jail that day. So they have that trigger there that connection of yellow means something bad. But just building that relationship with that person in the morning really has greatly helped them throughout the day to understand that I am safe. I'm here to get a good education and to really further myself in life. Actually, here's another good one, too. I'm kind of jumping all over here. Sorry about that. If a student is missing, we're using something called the Wish You Well ritual. And we had one classroom we had stopped in last week where a child's mother was having a baby and the child wasn't there that day. And the whole class wished that child well, saying, I really hope his mom, is having a safe delivery today. We can't wait to welcome Johnny back into our classroom tomorrow. But just kind of building that concept of we're all in this together with the student for them to understand when they're missed and they're not here, they want to get back to be with those other students in the classroom so that they're learning again.
Under relationship skills, a lot of what we do, as we mentioned earlier, is covering duties for the teachers. So then the classroom teacher can spend that time making those connections, eating with the kids, playing with them at recess, talking with them, and getting them to know each other. I also have covered classrooms where there's been a small crisis. I can go in and continue teaching that teacher's lesson, and she can pull the child out and deal with that in the moment to try to take care of it. So I can take over her class and spent 30 minutes in a second grade class. She asked me if I knew if I could handle it. So I think so.
Then for relationship skills, actually, Mark, just talk about that, responsible decision making. We check in with the students in the morning and we kind of get a goal set for the day. So what is the goal for you? Your goal is to maybe make it through math. We have students who are struggling with math. And we'll talk about maybe doing like a couple of problems for the day. If we can at least get you to do something throughout the day, tomorrow we'll in turn have a full worksheet or possibly, completing a complete test at that point. We're also doing check-ins with the teachers, how these strategies are working, and we're getting good reflections back from those teachers that, you may have a student who's using the Calm Kit in your classroom who you don't think's paying attention, but out of the corner you may hear that student give the answer back. So they're still learning within the classroom without being disruptive and outside in the hallways and such.
And some other things we're doing well, we've eliminated as many lines as possible at our school. So there are no lines in the cafeteria. We're doing a staggered bell schedule. And we have no lines for the bus dismissal, and if anybody's done bus dismissal at the end of the day. Yeah. So the students are staying in the classrooms, and then their teachers are being dismissed and actually walking them out to the bus, telling them, have a good evening, and they get on the bus. And we start all over again.
I'd like to say they're doing a fabulous job. They are go-getters. They are coming up with ideas. They are leading the charge. I feel like I just can't say enough about how great a job they're doing in Washington. And I know I've heard good things about you guys too. Their principal isn't here to talk about them as well, but I know you guys are too. But it's very, very good. It's very good.
So do you visit each classroom no matter what, or only if there is?
We use like a referral process with the teachers, but we are in and out almost every classroom just to kind of get to know the students. If there's anything we can help you with, if you're struggling with maybe something with a certain type of behavior in your classroom, we have resources we're going to either online, or we've got tons of books which have been good resources for us as well.
We could go in and do observations and try to figure out what that trigger is for that child that the teacher may not see, and just give, we can give them a list of things to try. They can choose the 3 things that they think would work best for them, and then we'll go for 2 weeks and we'll check back and see how it's going, and then we'll regroup and go from there.
Every time I'm at the building, they come like immediately. I usually seek them out first, but then I have this idea. This is what we're doing today. This is what we're going to try. I mean, it's this amazing, and I don't want to tell you how many hours they put in trying to figure this stuff out, both teams, because it's brand new. And you never know what you're going to get with a given kiddo from day to day, from second to second sometimes, and they just keep letting that kind of evolve and always looking for something new and different that's going to work. And as great as this team is, I'm going to have Sarah come up and introduce the other team from Spring Creek and our newest addition to the staff.
Thank you, too.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
So we have Megan Williams, who is our behavior coach, and then we have Frank Evans, who is our behavior coach, paraprofessional, and then we also have a new addition to our staff, which is Stella, who is a therapy dog that has been with Megan for how long?
She's been a therapy dog for 13 months.
13 months. So she has recently joined the school, and the students have been very excited to see her in and out throughout the day, and are using her, but they're both using her as a tool in the classrooms and out of the classrooms to support students. So I'm going to let Megan talk about Stella and the work that she's doing with our staff and students.
So I have a presentation. Yeah. I don't know who's controlling it.
There it is. It's on. And you can step up to the mic so we can hear you.
Yeah. Who am I?
The people at home will
Do I
need to
need
hear you in
to-
the mic. Yeah.
Do I need to say next?
Right there.
Okay.
Just move.
All right, so a therapy dog is a dog that is trained by a certified program that does animal-assisted activities or animal-assisted therapy. So we went to Dogters University. They are trained in love and affection, comfort to others, reducing stress and anxiety, lots of different things. So that's her on graduation day. So a therapy dog, we did 2 6 weeks obedience classes to learn how to walk on a leash. And then we did 12 weeks of therapy school, which basically was me sitting there learning and her laying down, which you can see she's very curious today. So, but they then had a test on temperament, behavior, cleanliness. We had to go to vet checks and all of that. So, So here are some benefits. Anger management, anxiety, stress control, just comfort, just seeing a dog, sensory, PBIS stuff. Like when we introduced her to the kids, it was, we need to still be quiet in the hallways. So when you're in the hallways, just wag your tails at her. Keep the hallway silent. They're not allowed to pet her in the hallways because if you're in the hallway, you're going somewhere and I'm going somewhere. So that would be not being responsible. So she really fits right into that, and rewards, behavior incentives, anything like that. So that's the day that we introduced her to all the kids. More benefits. We could go on forever about benefits. I do want to read this quote because I like it. Research has demonstrated that therapy dogs properly managed in the school setting can not only make a measurable difference in terms of gaining various skills such as reading enhancement, but also contributing critically to emotional and relational development. So she can be an icebreaker. Kids that might not want to talk to you that day, dog comes in like, oh, let me talk about the dog, and then that builds the relationship. So she has been read to in my previous building. We worked on reading comprehension with a kid, so the kid came down, read to her. Trying to think what else. Hygiene, because she has to be clean to come to school. There's so many different things that stem from a conversation with about the dog. So there are common concerns. We are covered by insurance, and then additional insurance can be purchased. So she's covered. Allergies, we have one student that we know of that's allergic to dogs in Spring Creek. She's allowed in that classroom, but just not on the upholstery. And then the students have to wash their hands. And then we have one fear, and that's another concern. She's allowed in the hallway near that student. He can actually now has been able to walk past her in the hallway. She's not allowed in his classroom. That's how we manage that. These are some pictures. So Stella herself, maybe I won't go back. Okay, she's a 2-year-old, almost 3, golden retriever, border collie mix. I got her at 6 months old from the shelter, and then trained her. And I was a school counselor by trade before, so I wanted a therapy dog. And this is some of the work we've done. In that second picture there, you can see that the kids are wagging their tails. Some kids have earned time with her as rewards. This second picture on the bottom is her watching a kid using his breathing techniques in a pinwheel. Belly rubs. We greet kids in the hallway every morning that she's there. That bottom middle picture is how she feels about meetings.
I saw that live the other day.
Yeah.
In action.
And then, there we go. Just some pictures of her greeting kids in the hallway across the top. The bottom, some behavior incentive rewards. The first kid had done a good job in PT, and we spend a lot of time down in the motor lab. So he got to pet her for a little bit. Second one, the kid finally did some work in her class for that day, so she got to spend some time with Stella, and then more belly rubs. Belly rubs are her favorite. So that's what she's actually been doing. She did get her first book from this is Dear Stella, I Love You. And then there's a picture of hearts and dogs on the inside. So cute. So we've seen students really respond to it, really want to work for spending time with her. A student on Tuesday this week, I got called down to hit the room. A student that usually would go from 0 to 60 very quickly. We walked in, and instead of spending an hour of trying to convince him to get back on track, it took 10 minutes. So just her presence has already started to make a difference. Are there any questions, or do you want to say anything? Any questions? All right, cool.
Any questions for Stella? I will tell you that when we hired Megan, that was an upfront and honest conversation about, I have Stella, And I'm really, really hoping to be able to get Stella. And obviously, there were some logistical things we had to work through, but we're able to get Stella in here. And I can tell you, she's absolutely sweet. She's very sweet, as you can see with that current pose that she has. So,
She loves to hold hands.
these teams respond to the needs that our buildings have, and Stella is obviously a great addition to help de-escalate and obviously as an incentive. So thank you, all three of you for being here too. I just wanted to add at the end of this too that this is not a program. These aren't things for students with special needs. These are for all students. That is something we had to make clear right away is the kids that they are seeing in most cases are not students that have been identified with any kind of special need. They just have high needs. And so this is something that can benefit every single child and teacher. And it's been a team effort. I know that, again, they've all spent a ton of time, but our principals have too. I know Mindy spent a great deal of time working with them, as well as Amy Todd, coordinating efforts to get together with some professional supports. These teams have gotten together twice together, I think once the first month and then once just last week in the second month, to talk about what they're doing. So they're actually collaborating between both buildings. So, and then finally, Piqua Central has similar behavior support program in their building that they're evolving from last year with a specialist as well as an aide. And that program has, I think, had a very positive impact because of the adjustments they've made in there as well. So it's moving. The idea is that we get our kids prepared for, by the time they hit high school, junior high, intermediate, those things, we're not seeing those behaviors anymore. That's the goal.
So are you seeing less people down at your office?
We are. I mean, truly, the work that they've done in a very short amount of time has been impactful. Certainly thinking of one success story in kindergarten where we had a student who was really struggling with the adjustment of no schooling prior to coming to kindergarten and managing those routines. And within the first few weeks of their coaching with that teacher and giving them support in the classroom, huge turnaround. So it's very encouraging in such a short amount of time and very, very hopeful for the work that they're going to continue to do to support the staff to develop their skills, work with all of our students. So.
One question I often get is, with that new bill, is there anything a K-3 kid can do that would get them removed? The answer is yes. There still are some safety measures in place where if there is a severe threat made by the student or there is a severe threat to themselves or anyone else, we can do that, and we have had to do that a couple of times. So it's not as though we would have to keep every kid in there regardless, but these strategies that they're doing is doing an excellent job of helping kids to prevent from getting to that level. Yeah. Any questions for them before we let them go? All right.
If you guys want to leave, unless you really want to sit through the rest of the meeting.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Okay, do you have anything else?
Nope, just the agenda here.
Okay, if you want to go ahead with your superintendent's agenda.
Sure. Would like to recommend the approval of the attached list of donations for Piqua City Schools. French Oil has donated to our Glen Helen program as well as Wings and Rings. The Glen Helen program is from Piqua Central Intermediate, where our 5th grade students go to a science camp. The Piqua Indian Athletic Boosters have donated some money for our athletic department. American Legion has done the same thing. And then we have Jackson Tube and Vectran who have donated for some science programs as well. I would also like to recommend the board to approve a list of grants for Piqua City Schools. And for that, we have the Altrusa International Foundation from Troy to Piqua Central Intermediate, the Altrusa International Foundation of Troy to Spring Creek for some books, and Walmart to the Piqua Junior High School. So we always appreciate those partnerships and those dollars that come in to support our programs. And then recommend the board approval of the attached overnight trip to the Piqua High School participation in the Hamilton Education Program from January 15th through January 16th. This will be through our Social Studies Department, and they'll get to see the production of Hamilton, which will fit well with their curriculum. They do a lot of activities. We'll give our students a chance to go to a big theater production. They'll also get to go to Andrew Jackson's estate and learn some things about that. So it should be a really great trip for our students.
Okay.
That's it.
Anything else to add? Okay, if there's nothing else, do we have a motion to approve the superintendent's agenda?
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion or questions, all in favor of approval, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Lyons, personnel agenda.
Thank you. I just want to point out a couple of things on here tonight. Obviously, the resignation of Dave Williams, a longtime teacher that many of us in the room have probably had as a teacher. Science teacher, particularly chemistry at the high school, and even came back and gave us several years beyond retirement as an amazing teacher. If you ask the kids currently who are in the class, he was incredible. I don't know that he would say that about me as a student, but probably about Mindy and Dwayne, but not about me. Anyway, he has decided to enjoy retirement fully at this point, so he was gracious enough to let us know early, and you have that on the agenda this evening as well.
I would concur. I did have Mr. Williams, enjoyed him. I wanted to personally go out and thank him and shake his hand, and I did. And I told him I thought he was iconic, and he is. Most people that have gone through his class know him well. Kids want him, and it's sad to see him go. So I do thank him for his years. I think he came back 7 more years. Is that
I think
right?
this will be his 8th. I think it's a 2-year increment.
So he
I
retired,
think this
but
is his
came
4th
back
time.
many years after, and we would take him another 7 if he would stay, but he's ready to retire.
We're
so.
still twisting his arm.
Yeah.
So we'll all miss the tie-dye lab coats that he wears regularly at the high school. So definitely will be missed, Mr. Williams. The other thing, just for clarity, I want to make sure when we hired Sarah Watson last year, we were lucky enough to hire Sarah Watson. She had just a few classes left to finish up, as well as her exam for her principal's licensure, and she has completed everything and turned that into the treasurer's office. And so we're going to accept her resignation as the dean of students, and then she'll be moving into the assistant principal role, which is a language issue for you all to approve this evening. So congratulations to her, and again, excited to have Sarah as part of the team. The only other thing that I always remind people of, if you'd like to volunteer, make sure you have your ID when you come into the buildings, because we are going to run you through the Raptor system and give you a badge to make sure you can come out. If you're going to do anything outside of school or overnight, you will need to be fingerprinted here at the board office. And thank you to all of our volunteers. And I think that's all I have.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Lyons?
How
If
about
not,
See, JoJo Mars is retiring too.
Oh my gosh, yes.
You're going to
So-
pay for that
I
one,
know,
buddy.
but here's the thing. I know, I did. Actually just met with her yesterday. She was, had a hard time, and I even asked her, I said, are you okay with me putting it on tonight's agenda? And she said yes, so I did get her approval. But a longtime Piqua fan. I mean, she loves Piqua City Schools, has forever. Rob should have even given me the evil eye that, like, I forgot to talk about her. We're going to be talking about JoJo forever. She is absolutely committed to this district and has done a great job in several different responsibilities, from secretarial roles all the way into her current role as the athletic secretary, and done a fantastic job with that, and we're going to miss her.
who's going to
now-
keep Chip in line?
Now, that's the greatest question that anybody's ever asked, and I can assure you that we're going to be working on that.
I will
But
say
also,
her retirement letter was one of the nicest letters I've ever
She-
read. It's the first one to retire.
usually you get a couple lines, and maybe you get some other things, but you can read into that and see how much she loves the school community. I mean, she just loves Piqua. So she's also agreed to continue to be a part of what we do, from working with Chip on ticket sales and things like that. So if you all know JoJo, she's not going anywhere far. We know that. She wanted to make sure her season tickets were taken care of. That was the key. But she's at a place now she's able to make, and not without a lot of hesitation and some tears. So she's going to miss it, and we're going to miss her. So, thank you, Mr. Patrizio, because that would have been very bad for me.
Still might be.
It probably will be.
All right, if there are no other questions, do we have a motion to approve the personnel agenda?
So moved.
Have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. I have nothing on hearing to the public on non-agenda items. We have no old business, but we have some items of new business.
Yep, I would like to recommend the board approval of the first read of the Neola Board Policy Update 38.1, which includes the following policies. I'll do just a quick summary of them because I'm sure you have had them and you've read them. So just for the audience, Neola, they take care of making sure that we get all the updates that are legally out there that we are required to have in board policy. So that's where these came from. So 1310, in lieu of a bond, treasurers can now, and the board can elect to have the treasurer covered by insurance policies instead. That's the crux of that one. 1340 disqualifies a treasurer from being re-employed if she can or he cannot secure a bond issue or an insurance policy. 1615 adds administrators to the use of the tobacco policy. It was already in there, but it was never a separate policy like all the other categories. So the legal part of that said we just had to have our own. Policy's already there, but it's going to be separate now. 2431, if a student failure to meet academic eligibility requirements is due to an incomplete grade given in one or more courses, then it allows them to come back. It outlines how to do that if the incomplete grade is changed into a passing grade. 5113.2 just removes some old language from the Elementary and Secondary Act that is no longer in place federally. So that comes out. 5200 outlines requirements for the district to make contact with parents when their child is considered excessively absent from school as outlined by the state law. 5350, all school personnel needs to be alerted now if a student exhibits signs of unusual mental health related behavior who threaten to attempt self-injury or suicide. Any such signs or the report of such signs from another student or staff member needs to be taken with the utmost seriousness. What that's saying is, in the past there was a lot of, don't repeat that, don't say, don't. The key now is important personnel need to be aware of it, not as a gossip, but as everybody should be alert in case they can support that student in a different way. 5460 just adds show choir to the PE requirements, so now show choir students can get credit for PE if they're in show choir, which has long been something everybody thought was the case. 7300, unused school property needs to be available for sale to charter schools for 1 year now instead of 2 years. We don't have to worry about that. We've met all those requirements. 7440.3, no use of drones on any school property without the permission of the acting superintendent. The reason that's in case is child safety. No one wants drones flying over, watching student patterns, looking at buildings in different ways and so on. So there is to be no drones out there. I've had a couple people over the years that have called and asked if they can do different things, and you find out why, and you get permission based on what they're certified in. So the board policy is very clear in terms of what they have in place that allows them to do it. 8462 outlines training for staff regarding student abuse and neglect. And 8500, there's no change in the policy except it was referencing lunch, and it just changed lunch to meals to include all breakfast programs. So the meaning stayed the same. The word lunch just changed to meals. Otherwise, there were no changes in those policies that you read. But this will be the first read. We'll do the second read next time.
And there's no action need to be taken.
No action tonight.
Okay.
Number 2.
All right. The next two items are dealing with our finances. And so tonight I brought our financial advisor, Heather Arling from Bradley Payne, to speak to you guys about a bond refinancing option that we have, as well as some information on our lease purchase agreement. So she's going to come up and talk to you a little bit about that.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to try and stick to the script, or I was told to stick to the script, so we're not here all night if anyone's talked with me before.
Much appreciated, by the way.
I know. So the first resolution allows for the refunding of the 2012 bonds, and the $21.94 million is the full amount of the callable bonds. With the volatility in the market, it may not be that full 21 plus million. It may be a significantly smaller number. We've set a threshold that is within the GFOA guidelines that one maturity may be refunded because there is a significant amount of savings, and another may not be refunded because there isn't enough savings. We want to leave that on the table for a later date, which is the callable date. So that volatility, a tweet may happen, we may lose the savings and not refund any. I'm going off script. And we may not refund any of it. However, if the savings is significant enough and economical, we will refund a portion or all of the callable bonds. Does that make sense? Any questions?
How much do you expect to save if this goes through?
If we refund all of them in yesterday's market, it's a little under $1 million, it's about 900,000. However, some of those maturities may not make economical sense to refund.
Are
May
you going
not
to
be
leave the
smart.
same maturity, or are you going to just spread them out?
So let's say the 2025 maturity has a large savings, we'll refund that. But let's say the 2032 refunding, the savings is small and it makes more sense to wait and refund them later, we'll do that. So he's got a long day ahead of him in the near future when we go to the market. There'll be a lot of analytical talk.
But the same maturity is going to be on the newly issued bonds, is that correct?
Correct. The one that is called the 2025
Uh-huh.
will be gone from the existing bonds and on the new.
So right now, we have some that are sporadically put in there, like at 5%, and that's high, given the market conditions currently. So those 5%, they'll be gone, and we'll put in something that's more like 3 or whatever it ends up being. So that, we're going to basically cherry pick off there,
So
ones that we can save money on.
with the money saved on it, I assume that money will go into those buildings' PI funds. Is that where it's going, or where is it going to go?
No, it actually goes directly back to taxpayers in
Okay.
millage savings. So
Okay.
when we set millage rates to collect with the county auditor, they're going to look at what is coming due. How much money do you need to collect to be able to pay that debt service? And so as we lower the amount of debt service that needs to be collected, the millage rate that they need is going to be less, which means your tax bills will be less.
So it's a direct savings to the taxpayer.
Correct.
It's a great savings for the taxpayers, yeah.
And then the second resolution is the lease purchase, which allows for up to $12 million to complete the renovations for the junior high and the high school.
So just so Jeremy and I might banter off numbers here. So since I've been on the board, we put, it was a little over $3 million while they were finishing up the air conditioning system in the high school, which is about $3 million. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then we had some bonds issued on that, which are due when?
Well, 2026 is when that lease purchase arrangement is up. So
Okay.
we have it's basically we put it into another account. It's a balloon payment that's due in 2026.
And we also put in the exterior, we did all the mortar work and brickwork on that. How much was that? A little over 700,000, or was that more?
And a roof and other things.
Well, the roof was 2.5 million, is that right?
Yeah, we've done about $8 million worth of renovations in the last 4 years.
In 4 years, and that all came from money that we carried over from year to year without raising any money. So now we're looking at finishing the thing off, which estimates are between how much on the high school?
It could be $6 to $8 million, and then there's work to be done at the junior high as well.
And we're talking about redoing bathrooms, we're talking about repainting the building, putting new lockers in, redoing the commons area.
Lots and lots of flooring.
Lots
Paint
and lots of
jobs.
flooring.
We've got concrete
paint
work,
jobs.
brickwork.
Yeah, we got block replacement that has to be done because of the water intrusion, where we have block that basically exploded.
Windows.
Yeah, we have windows. So there's a long laundry list that we discussed during our permanent improvement levy. So those proceeds from that levy are what will be used for us to be able to complete these projects. And like we talked about during the levy, it was important that we had the money all at one time versus spread out over a long period of time, because there's things that got to be done in a sequence. And it's hard to go back and do one thing and then go back and try to do another when they all have to be tied
So
together.
even after the issuance of bonds, there's going to be money left over for buses to pay the bonds on the air conditioning system, to pay the bonds for the new bonds issued, right?
Well, these
On this,
It's a lease
we'll have
purchase.
money
these are yeah, it's a lease purchase. We're not issuing.
Okay.
So
What's a lease purchase? I guess that's a little confusing.
if you're going to go
Is this
buy
the
copy
state of
machines,
Ohio?
you lease them. If you go buy a car, you lease it, kind of thing. Except in this case, when it's paid off, it's paid off.
So we get these monies directly from the state of Ohio? Is that where they come from, or where do they come from?
Directly from the PI levy.
I understand
revenue.
that,
Mhm.
so,
So instead of over time, we're getting them in one big chunk. But
Right.
the levy that was approved, we'll just be paying for.
so where's
over
that
time.
one big chunk of money coming from?
From
That's-
the lease purchase.
And a bank.
That's,
An investor, a
is it a
bank.
bank,
An
is it
investor,
an
yeah.
investor, who's doing
We will
it?
go and find
Okay.
the lowest cost of funds available.
Okay. And then that goes for, how many years are you looking at? You're looking up to 20 years here,
20.
is that correct?
20 years, not to exceed 12 million.
Okay.
At this point, the idea is just to go in at 10, and if interest rates change and we can do a better job, then we might be able to get more than 10. So
Okay.
that's the plan at this point. This is no new money from taxpayers. This is using the money that we, again, talked about when we went through the PI levy process. This is just the ability, this is the mechanism that we can get the money to do the work that we discussed.
I just want people to understand that we've got enough money to pay this lease purchase, the air-conditioned monies that are out there,
The buses,
the buses,
as well as having money left over to do
And
regular
you'll-
standard improvements that we
and
have.
you'll still have some extra money left over.
We were so lucky when the roof started leaking like a spaghetti strainer that we had money to fix that, because it could have caused some serious damage. Same thing with the envelope of the building. If we didn't fix that, we were in for some big,
Yeah.
much bigger costs later on. So we are so very lucky we had that, but we don't have that for the rest of it. So
I'm going to be leaving the boards in a few months, but I'd like to say that I commend the past board members I served with, the past superintendent, the past treasurer, the current superintendent, treasurer, and the current board members for their handling of the fiscal responsibilities of the school. We are a very sound school district, and we're able to do these things because of all these people.
I would agree. Any questions?
You got off the hook easy, didn't you?
I did, thank you.
Kind of kept it short.
Okay, so do we need to
We'll
approve
need to
these
vote on them individually.
individually? Okay, do we have a motion to approve the first resolution?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, Mr. Hiddle, please call the roll.
Mr. Bostic.
Aye.
Mr. Ford.
Aye.
Mr. Patrizio.
Aye.
Mrs. McMacken.
Aye.
Mr. Height.
Aye. Motion carries. And for the second resolution on the lease purchase.
So
Have a
moved.
motion to approve?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Motion in multiple seconds. If there's no further discussion, please call the roll.
Mr. Patrizio.
Aye.
Mrs. McMacken.
Aye.
Mr. Bostic.
Aye.
Mr. Ford.
Aye.
Mr. Height.
Aye. Motion carries. If there's nothing else now to come before the board, our next meeting will be October 31st at 6 p.m. And we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Have a motion, have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you all for coming tonight.